take a short tour, as I said in the comments, and take a look at a couple of the looms that I have and see what's on them, and I'll chat about them. As I also said, I'll do my best to answer comments during the live presentation, but sometimes I just get going and I forget to check these things out. Again, welcome. If you want to say hello and that you can hear me right now, that would be very helpful. And then I'm going to lay out the plan for today. The plan right now is that I'm going to go to a table where I have some yarn, talk a little bit about some yarn, and then go to one loom and talk about what's on that loom and how I try to do my best to design it. And then I'm going to share with you some of the hand-dyed warps that I do and explain a little bit about those. And if time, we'll go to the third loom where I have some other things. I did some short recordings today that I will put up on YouTube eventually. And of course, if you're missing the live, you can always watch this later on. All right, we're going to get started. I'm going to apologize right away because I am going to be moving the camera around, and I'm going to try to go as slow as I can so I don't make anyone a little ill at ease, or maybe just close your eyes while I'm moving the camera. And then I'm also going to move my laptop so I can check out the comments. All right, so hang in there while I get behind the camera. And as you can tell, I'm moving a little bit here. I'm going to turn it and then kind of walk a little bit with it. And right now we're going to be going over to this area where the cones are. We're going to bypass some of the warp that are hanging. And we're going to take a look, first of all, down here at these cones of yarn. All right, there's some cones of yarn. Some of you might have skeins of yarn. Maybe you have cones, maybe you have all kinds of things. This was an experiment. And what I mean was a real experiment, and some of you might have already seen some things. What I did was I took a bunch of yarn that I had on cones that I didn't know what to do with and just mixed them all together. Well, I did it and I had some interesting results. Now we're going to go over to the one loom and we're going to take a look at it. Again, apologize for all the moving that's going to be going on here. Try to go as slow as I can. And hopefully the lighting is going to be the way I hope it is. All right, hi Kathy. I think I see Laura on there as well. All right, move this over here. Whoa, there goes the camera. All right, we got benches going on here and all kinds of things. I just love things going live. All right, there we go. Well, this is the yarn that I just showed you on cones. It's not all of it, but it's some of it. Sometimes maybe you decide you want to use up some leftovers and all of a sudden you put all this yarn on the loom, but what are you going to weave with it? There's so many cool colors. Well, we have a couple of options. One of the things that I decided to do was try to pick some of the yarn that's in the warp, maybe some of it that's more neutral than others, and then I also tried to use some that was not quite as neutral. So what I'd like you to do right now, I'm going to put a couple cones or a couple of bobbins out, and I want you, make sure they don't fall through, to think about which one, if you were going to weave with this, which one might you use? I'm going to find them all here. Let's see. And, oh, I know I have one more. Here we go. And we have one more. Now, some of you might have already been part of that experiment. Hi, Angela. Like I said, I'm going to peek over and look at that once in a while, but I'm not one of those people that do a very good job with recognizing all of you. Now, just take a look at all of these and think to yourself which one you might use and why. Why might you pick it? You're welcome to type in your answers. You don't have to. Just think about it. One of the things I thought, well, you know what? There's a lot of this gold, so maybe I'll try some of the gold and see what happens. I'm not really a gold and yellow person, but I thought I'd try that. And then I saw this is kind of a turquoise, but not quite as bright. Thought maybe I'd try that one. And then I see a lot of green. This is kind of an olive green. I've used that also in the warp. Maybe I'll try that one. I see a lot of people using white. Well, white can be a very, I guess, summery color. I don't always like to use white because sometimes it covers up everything. And then, well, I don't have any black, but I don't have any gray either. I'm using things that are on my shelf. And then this color is kind of a combination of some of the blues that are in there. Well, I'm not going to weave right now. I did this ahead of time. So what I'm going to do, as I try to make my way around the loom, I'm going to show you what happened. So let's take that apart, and we're going to come, and there we go. So this, what I like to do, and something you might do, is if you have some yarn, put on an extra yard and then experiment with it. What I decided to do here was to use tabby as well as the pattern I wanted. Now, if you're new to weaving, whatever kind of weaving you're doing, you may realize that if you do a tabby weave like this, it does not use up as much yarn. So if you don't have a lot of yarn, do a plain weave. But if you have a little bit more, you could do, this is kind of a twill pattern that I thread the loom with. Now, taking a look at all of these, you think, we have all of these colors here. And when I surveyed those of you on the WAFA group, you folks chose this one, half of you chose this one, half of you chose this one. I didn't show you all the other ones because I personally had already ruled them out. Now, what happened here is I also have them, I was able to wash a little bit of them. Let's see, which one is it? Okay, this is the one that I'm weaving now, and the one that most of you chose, and I really like it. It really pops. Now, again, the lighting in here might be washing things out a little bit. I don't know if I can hold it up, if that's going to probably make it even more of a shadow. I'm going to take a look and see what it looks like. Yeah, that really, you can't see it at all. I do have some of these already in my shop, and I was able to make, I think I have 8 placemats and a table runner. So that's one thing you can do if you're trying to decide what to do with a lot of leftover yarn. And that was one of the things that I decided to do, and I think it turned out nice. Oh, I forgot. The other thing was the yarn that's in the warp with all different weights. It was 8-2, 6-2, maybe some 10-2, mercerized, unmercerized. And someone wondered what would happen when I wet finished it. It came out just fine. The reason it did was I don't have all the mercerized grouped together. I spread out the mercerized, the unmercerized, and all the different size yarns. I spread them out throughout the warp. I think if you put them all together, you're going to have some strange things happen. But if you spread them out, see what happens. Yes, the black is lovely. I have to tell you, one of the first things I did in the 90s when I started weaving, I actually put cotton and wool and rayon in my warp. It worked because I didn't realize I'd spaced them out. So again, you can do all kinds of things. All right, so that's one loom, and this is a 4-shaft pattern. I think I took it out of that book with all the different patterns in. So there you go on that. And now I do have, I'm not sure how many yards left, but I do have quite a bit left. All right, I'm going to set up another area here, and we're going to take a look. All right, I'm setting up something here before you see it, and maybe that will help a little bit. All right. Now we're going to go visit that light table. Oh, I forgot. Before we go to the light table, let me show you something else while we're still here. I also decided that I wanted to use some more of my leftover yarn. And what I did, here's another warp. This might look kind of interesting. What I did was I have actually 3 warps here. I'm going to put the white in the middle of the placemats, and I'm going to use the groups of colors on the edges so that when I wind this on, you're going to see white in the middle and colored on the edges. And I'm not sure what I'm going to weave with, but that's another way that I decided to use up some of my leftover yarn. You can kind of be creative and do different kinds of stripes and things like that. So I did want to share that with you as well. Now, again, we're going to take a little slow tour over to the light table again. And this time, we're going to take a look at one of the dyed warps that I do. One way, I guess I should say. Typically, I play it safe. I used to do lots of changes of color. I would have maybe this teal and black and this color and do them in shorter sections, and then I would dye it and weave it. I found it was a problem to try to make two panels that match, so I kind of chickened out a little bit. Now what I do is I like to make longer sections. We have the teal. The way I try when I'm dyeing this, another thing you can do, this is all tencel, is think about what two colors, if they're going to be together, I gotta check my camera here, that what are they going to look like nice together? Well, I found out that a lot of people like black and red, so I'm going to have a transition piece. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And here's a kind of a teal color and a black, and also kind of a purple and a teal. That's what this warp is. Now, I did another warp recently I'm going to show you shortly, but this is my play it safe. Typically with something like this, now this is for scarves. I can probably get a couple of red scarves, but I'll only have one transition scarf. So that's that one. Let me show you what happens, some ways of weaving that. There are two possibilities. Let me move this out of the way. If you just heard a thud, it wasn't thunder, it was the cones falling on the floor. Now this one is one I had shorter colors in. I guess I need to bring this up there. There we go. Bring it down a little bit more there. All right. So what you can do if you want to try your hand at dyeing, this is all cold water dye, tencel, cotton, any plant fiber. You can make yourself maybe a short warp, maybe for 2 scarves or something like that. This was 3 colors. And you can see, this was the end, so you have where the tie was. Sometimes it's very end and you get a little bit of white. I could have removed that, but we'll say it was part of the plan. And then, again, thinking of a color that it might go with, this is, I believe, a hot pink persimmon color. And then we went to a navy blue. But then the other question is, what are you going to weave with? I decided to weave with an eggplant. Now this whole scarf was woven with eggplant. Didn't have to change the color. It kind of, this does not pop as much as it could have if I had used some of the pink. But there's a trick. If you really want something to pop, and again, I believe the weft was all hand dyed on this one as well. Now take a look at this one. I hope you can see the difference. See how bright that yellow is? Can you imagine if I had woven with this the whole way, you would not see the bright yellow. So what's the trick? Use yarn that's the same color. When you're dyeing your warp, dye some yarn that matches exactly. So in this case, I dyed yellow, we dyed some gray, and we dyed this teal color. But there's another trick. And there is a weaver, some of you may or may not know of him, Randall Darwell. He did silk, gorgeous things. I had the opportunity to take a class with him, and he shared one of his secrets. You can see it here. And I also have a video on it. I hope you can see the lines here. Let me get my pointer. Again, if you're making any comments, I'll get to them in a minute because I can't see them over there. What I did here, this was woven with the bright yellow, but then I saw it was coming to this gray. What you do is you do one single gray, maybe 3 or 4 yellow, another gray, maybe 2 or 3 yellow, and then you keep reducing the number of yellow, keep the gray, and then it's gray, yellow, gray, yellow, gray, yellow, and you do the reverse over here. You have 1 yellow, and you end up basically gradually shading that. The same thing happened here. So that's something else in the planning. You need to plan ahead of that. This one doesn't show up as much. The other cool thing about this pattern is another 4-shaft pattern. If you can see those squares. it looks like, to me, it looks like an 8-shaft pattern, but it's something else to try to experiment with. Sometimes the other trick that I do is I try to find something in one of the books, I go through all the books, that I can use the same threading, but just change the treadling and get some really cool different patterns. But that was what happened with that nice bright yellow. Another trick there that you can possibly do. Hi, Marie. Yes, you didn't miss it. Thank you. Now, one more thing. I'll show you what and I'm going to go to the loom to show you what's on the loom right now. I decided to try something different because, just like the rest of you, I go on Facebook and see what other people are doing. I don't want to repeat exactly what they're doing, but I do want to do something that maybe might work. This time, I totally changed things. And I know some of you might think I'm totally nutty, and sometimes I am, because I do these crazy long warps and I do them as an experiment. I figure they're going to turn out, hopefully. In this case, though, I used three or four colors here, an amethyst, orange, kind of a red color, I don't know, all kinds of colors on one half of the loom, of the warp, but I did them in small sections. Well, no, I forgot. I actually dyed this while it was in a chain. So it was all chained up and I dyed it. I never do that. Why? Because most likely you're going to get white spots, because if it's chained too tightly, it's very hard to get all of that in there. This one again was the same idea. I did the same thing. I did all the colors, and yes, I had white spots. What I had to do was take it all apart, and I had to take a little dye, and I wanted to pour it in because I didn't want that many white spots. I cannot wait to weave with that warp. I also took all the colors that were left over for this one, put them all in one jar, and dyed 2 skeins of yarn to weave with. It came out kind of almost this color, but when I just put them together, I did not have enough of this to do the same with, but what on my shelf I actually inherited some terracotta kind of colors, orangey kind of colors that I'm going to use. Alrighty, so that is the warp there. Let's go over to the loom that has some tencel on it. Again, you get to see my floor. Oh, and here we go. Let's take a look at a couple of things that were finished. All right. I wonder if I can, the lighting isn't the best here. These are really not, they look kind of pinkish, but they're not. Sometimes I need to get something off the loom because I have a show coming. This is where you can see there was orange, and then it went to black. Let me turn my, sorry, you're gonna look at my flowery shirt here for a moment. There we go, I can see what's going on. And this is one of the ponchos, I call it transition poncho. This one I hand dyed the warp, it's 5/2 tencel and the weft, but this came out a little heavier than I liked. So, what do you do if you want a lighter weight? This, the other part of the warp, and what was done here was, rather than weaving with the 5/2, I changed to 8/2 tencel, and it's a lot lighter weight, it flows better. Now that's something else you can do if you're weaving something and you feel like it's too heavy. The reason I do that is that many of you know if you have a thicker yarn in the loom, it takes less time to warp your loom, but then you can always weave with a lighter weight yarn. So that's with that. We'll move these out of the way. And now we'll go over to see what's on this loom. Thank you, Angela. It's not my color, but it did turn out pretty. Now this is, again, one of the transition areas or sections. I was weaving black, and black, I don't know about you folks, but weaving with black, knitting with black, doing anything with black yarn, it doesn't reflect the light, it just soaks up everything. It's not that much fun to do. But I did have a section, and this one, again, I came to this kind of a turquoisey, green turquoise, I guess you might call it, and now I'm at the point where I am going to keep weaving. If I wanted, with the black, if I wanted this to really pop, then I would change it. But I like the soft look. And then when that one's finished, I did happen to hand dye some of the yarn that's the same, and I'll probably be doing a shawl coat with this. I have to see, I think it's going to be fine. I think this one I actually dyed the 8-2. So that's what's going to happen next on this particular loom. This is a loom I have to finish so I can get to that really experimental work that was just finished. Now I need to do a little relocating here with our light. Any questions so far? Yeah. Yes, that's true. A black headlight. That's an interesting idea. And the light that I have over my loom does a pretty darn good job with giving me the right light to do that. Sometimes it's better to weave at nighttime with the light on than to weave the black during the daytime with natural lighting. I'm not sure what the deal is on that or not, but anyway. All right, here we go again. Moving over. See if I can get to this one. Oh. Okay, and now we're stuck on wires. And I know a lot of people like purple. And here we are with the little purple. And these are what I would call my infamous cats. Now this is something else that I had to figure out how to do. Many of you know I am not a cat person. I don't have cats except for maybe a few stray ones that run around that are other people's cats. But in this case, this is the cat pattern that a lot of people like. And what I found was I was doing mostly solid colors, like a black cat, a white cat, and maybe a tan cat. However, what do you know? People have calico color. If I'm using the right word, calico cats. I never get those terms right. How do you do that? How do you get this yarn? Couldn't buy it anywhere. This is this is an overshot pattern, and when you're doing overshot, normally the yarn that's making the pattern is at least twice the size as the yarn that's going to be the tabby. A whole other story in itself. What I did was take some yarn and it's kind of like just put some powder dye on it. It was damp. Put powder dye on it, press it on, let it dry, and I do a few skeins. I'd sometimes white, sometimes orange. And that's another thing you can do. Or maybe even if you just want to do a little bit of weaving of something. Now, what the other thing you have to do when you're weaving, and since this is all hand dyed, or any color, I have purple now. I don't have any purple yarn this thin on my shelf, or I would be weaving purple here. I first used a gray. The gray was all right, but what I found I really like this color, this blue, because if you notice, it almost looks purple. That's another thing when you're weaving. You find that different colors, when they're next to each other or woven together, can totally change. It's a little different than when you're painting or mixing colors, watercolors or oils or anything like that. Now I have my little cheat sheet over here. Those of you who do any weaving, I put a little pattern. This is my treadle pattern. And I start at the bottom. And right now, I just did the body of the cat. And the next part is I have to start doing narrow for the neck. Now I have to remember where my feet are here. All right, I need to go back down to, it says 1. Then I am going to go to 2. See if I have this correct here. This is usually when I make mistakes when I'm doing live. Okay, now that is where I started one. Look at that, we just pulled one through there. What am I gonna do about that? Well, I'm gonna take it and pull it through the other side after we get off the computer here. All right, so that I have the 2. It's gonna get a little bit narrower here, a little bit narrower. And what happens with tabby is you have your pattern, but you need to lock it. And this is the locking device. And it's called overshot because you're going over threads. Right now I'm going over several threads at one time. And now we're going to go back. We got the little neck going on here. And we're going to go to, pretty soon to the head. See if I did that one right. 4, yep. And now we're going to do that little head. 3 little ones for heads. One more for the head. And then we have the ears. One more. I'll have to go a little bit lighter on this one to get those little ears. And one of those. And then I'll finish that up there. And the other nice thing about this particular threading, I can weave bunnies, I can weave bees, I can weave all kinds of different patterns because of the treadling sequence. And I do have these patterns are available for you if you have 8 shaft. Good. Yeah, perfect. Good one, Kathy. I also have some orange that I did, and I just do some black on it, and it works out very nicely on that. All right, now, last part is I am going to go back here, and hopefully you can see me. Try to keep this to a half hour. And we will see how well I can get back here. And if you have any questions right now, I know you're looking at the seat right now. We'll move it on up. Hopefully you can actually see me. I won't chop my head off here. You also, there you get a view of a lot of the yarn. Some of the yarn in the middle is tencel, some is bamboo, and on the left, white yarn, all kinds of yarn, cotton that I will use for dyeing, and also on the right, both sides, there's lots of cotton and tencel, different kinds of yarn that we'll use for doing different projects. Well, this is, I know, Tour de Fleece month. I do also spin. Actually, I have some people coming over tomorrow. We're going to do some spinning, and then I think in 2 weeks on Sunday as well. However, I normally have looms in operation, and I thought I'll just check in with everyone so you can see there we can do a tour de loom and see what's on the looms. I thank everyone. I'm going to take a look over here. Oh, I don't see any other questions or comments. Again, if you have something you want to ask me, you can send me a message, type it in here, and I'll get back to you. If you have any ideas for future events that I could do, just let me know. I'll see if I can work it in. Oh, I have one person. I do have something. One of my friends, one of the people I know that weaves, suggested that I do something that people, if you don't know what to do with your yarn, and I said, well, that might be a good Zoom meeting. And the idea would be that people would come and just on the Zoom, bring all this yarn you don't know what to do with, and rather than just me answering it, maybe we could all kind of help you out and decide what you could do with a yarn. Of course, we're going to focus that on weaving. Anyway, that might be one that I might offer next month, and that would be a Zoom meeting because it's kind of hard for you folks to show pictures of your yarn during a live presentation. And then I think it'd be fun to have a lot of people involved in that. So anyway, that's one idea that another weaver suggested, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me tonight or today, wherever you're living. And I hope, I think I'm getting a little thunderstorm right now outside. So I hope everyone stays cool and dry. And everyone,